Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for listening today. This is the security news update for the week ending July 2nd, 2023. For those of you who are in the United States, wish you a happy and safe 4th of July. In the alerts department, there is now a publicly available exploit for the Cisco AnyConnect VPN. I guess it's now called the Cisco Secure Client for Windows. So if you're using the Cisco VPN product, then you should definitely patch it. Secondly, President of Russia suggested that since they claim the Western powers sabotage the Nord pipeline, that they should be able to go off and sabotage the fiber optic cables underneath the sea at will. Don't know that they would do that because there probably would be a significant reaction from the West. But, Putin is not necessarily in his right mind, so I don't know that I would apply logic to him. Retaliations could be either of the cyber or kinetic variety. And it wouldn't surprise me if the U.S. is leaking fake plans for a response to Putin's team as a signal to go off and tell him what might happen if he were to do that. Repairing those fiber optic lines, undersea fiber optic, is very, very expensive and time consuming. You got to dredge them up, splice them up on the surface, and drop the cable back down. It is not neither a simple nor a quick process, and there's not enough extra capacity to make up for that. So that would definitely impact folks that are dependent on under-oceanic cables. In the reference department, Cisco and the NSA published guidance on securing your CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines. If you're using CI/CD, then this would definitely be a recommended reading for you. Microsoft has a whole line of utilities that have been written by Mark Russinovich for years, and I've been a big fan of Mark's even before he sold out to Microsoft. There's now a new version of his auto runs module, which is kind of interesting because it tells you all the hooks that malware can come up with to try and gain persistence is a better word, inside of Windows. There's a couple of hundred of those. So that's interesting. And unlike a lot of Mark's tools, which are command line driven, there's a GUI version and quite nice. So you might want to check that out. In the patches department, Apple is in the spotlight again, unfortunately. There is a bit of malware or spyware called Triangle DB. It's infecting iPhones, and Apple is picking up a tip from Microsoft's playbook, which was that they patched the symptoms rather than the underlying problem. And then, of course, the malware adjusted. So now they're having to go back in and actually fix the underlying problem, which they have finally done. And there is now another patch. So, so be it. But part of it was 6 and 15.7, and now there's a new version. Also, in the interesting news department, the Chinese spy balloon that we shot down earlier this year apparently was chock full of U.S. electronics, as well as some custom Chinese stuff. But a lot of it was, the kind of stuff that you can buy on Amazon, and then stick in a diplomatic pouch and carry it back to China. So just kind of interesting thing there. They also claim that the device does not appear to have been transmitting back to China. So I'm not sure exactly what their plan was there. Under the legislative and news section, Meta, owner of Facebook and other products, has said that in light of what it appears to be Canada's implementation of a law which requires them to subsidize, that's the word, subsidize newspapers, requires, let me try that again, requires Facebook and Instagram to subsidize newspapers if they carry their news and give them readership. Meta is saying, well, people don't come to Meta products for their news, which actually is true, but what they do come to Meta platforms is for a validation of the things that they believe to be news. So we shall see if they go through with this, but if they do, probably not the best outcome. The newspaper certainly won't get a lot of money if these platforms decide not to go off and carry their news. And it's an all or nothing deal, right? They can't go off and pick and choose, unlike the Australia law, which was passed last year, where they could cut private deals with the newspapers if they wanted to. This is kind of a state-sponsored socialist solution, and either they buy in or they don't. So we shall see. Speaking of Australia, Australia has told Twitter that they need to clean up their hate speech online, and if they don't do that, then they could be fined up to $500,000 a day. Australia's given them 28 days from when they sent out this announcement. And Twitter could go off and decide to abandon Australia, but the problem is that there's a lot of European countries that are going to fall right on the bandwagon of this. And so, dismissing Australia as a one-off probably is not a great strategy because it's not a one-off. In the education department, we have the OWASP top 10 for APIs, and this is a new OWASP top 10 list. Really important because APIs are becoming a real vector for the bad guys to go hack from. So if you have software that uses APIs and you're not familiar with the OWASP API top 10, definitely something that you ought to look at. In the breaches department, American and Southwest Airlines were hit by a breach. Of course, it was a third party. American was quick to point out, to say, well, it wasn't us got breached. It was just the company that we selected, we vetted, we managed. But other than that, we weren't involved with it. So I don't know that the people whose data was compromised really care whether it's a vendor or the airline themselves. But I just don't think this strategy of trying to distance yourself from the vendors that you pick and manage it really carries much weight with consumers. Also, be careful what cyber promises you make. Suncor Canada, which is in the petroleum business and runs a bunch of gas stations amongst a lot of other things, got hit by a cyber attack. This comes after the Colonial Pipeline attack, where they said, we're going to go clean up the security practices of the petroleum industry. Well, apparently that didn't quite happen, or at least not completely. I think obviously cleaning that up is much easier said than done. Their heart may be in the right place and maybe they're doing the right things, but clearly it didn't work in this particular case. JP Morgan was fined millions of dollars for deleting evidence, and we'll see what the judge does in this particular case. What Chase was trying to do was implement their records retention program. I think they were trying to do it right. They just didn't do it right. And trying to do it right versus actually doing it right is a big difference. So moral of the story is, if you have a records retention requirement and you're managing your records, make sure you delete the stuff you're supposed to delete and don't delete the stuff you're not supposed to delete. I wrote a piece last week, the week before, on how quickly it takes bad guys to find secrets that are exposed to the public in your cloud servers. And one of the readers said, well, how do I harden my cloud servers? So I wrote a piece this week with about 15 tips of saying, here, do this and this and this to harden your cloud servers. Nothing to make it bulletproof, but making it harder than the next guy is probably sufficient. Speaking of governments that are doing weird things, the UK has proposed a ban on end-to-end encryption. Now they claim this is not actually a ban on end-to-end encryption, but in fact it really is. Both WhatsApp and Signal say that they will block UK users if this ban goes into effect. It has not been approved by Parliament yet, but they say they will just block the UK. Apple has been sort of on the fence about it, but I think that the advertising tagline of use Apple products, the only unsecured messaging application in the UK. Probably is not a great advertising moniker, but they might do it because they think they want the money. So stay tuned. This is still an open deal, and I think that part of what's going on is these providers are trying to put pressure on the UK to tamper down what they're talking about. We shall see. And in the news tidbits, an ex-FBI employee was sentenced to 46 months in jail for taking classified documents home. If that sounds familiar, it is similar to what a former president did. And that certainly doesn't help his case, given that somebody else got caught at it and was sentenced to 46 months. Obviously, he doesn't want that outcome. Europol has been working on what they got out of the EncroChat takedown. That was a supposedly secure police-proof messaging solution, which was neither secure nor police-proof. They took them about 2 years to analyze just millions of messages, and they arrested 6,500 crooks and recovered about $900 million in proceeds, including cash and drugs. So that's pretty cool. There is a shady Chinese encryption chip manufacturer that American companies are still buying from, and by the way, delivering to Navy, NATO, and NASA customers. Apparently, the designated entities list prohibits U.S. companies from selling to these people on the list, but doesn't stop them from buying from these people. Sounds like something that ought to be fixed. TikTok has fessed up to the fact that they lied to Congress when they said they weren't storing U.S. customers' data in China. And it turns out this is one of those deals that depends on what your definition of is, to quote another former president. And they're saying, well, we just meant the data that we were stealing from your apps, not the data that we got by other means. So I'm sure this will add more fuel to the anti-TikTok fire. We shall see what happens there. And finally, in the News Bites department, two different hacking groups claim to have hacked one of the big Russian SATCOM providers, whose customers include the FSB and also the Russian military. Whether one of the groups is supposedly aligned with Ukraine, whether this is just an attempt to drive a wedge in the Soviet Union, who did it is not clear. But what is clear is, their communications is down, and they've kind of gone to a backup communications mechanism. Don't know how effective that backup is, but clearly, if nothing else, it's super embarrassing. And lastly, with Putin threatening to cut over undersea cables and other outages that we've already seen, hacktivists already cutting cables. We've seen that in all over Europe and also across the United States. Is your business continuity plan really up to the task, especially as you move more and more things to the cloud? Are you prepared? What happens if internet connectivity goes down, either from your side or from your provider's side? And if you need help with that, please reach out to us. In the meantime, have a safe 4th of July. And until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized